All right, so yesterday during the live show, I was asked by a attendee what I thought of the gold standard, and I had a difficult time answering that because I'm not exactly that knowledgeable of that particular topic, and I will also admit that I'm not that knowledgeable of trade policy, as far as just the history of people's interest in it and whatnot. Say hello to Ruben and give him a greeting and make sure that my audio is working, and it is good. Um, I've said it before that NAFTA was a piece of trash because it was shipped American jobs to Mexico and Canada. I thought, hey, Ruben, I thought you said your audio sucks right after I said that I could that it was good. Like I just thought it'd been so funny. Like right after I'm like, all right, we're good to go, and he's like, no, no. But yeah, NAFTA sucked because it was took the American jobs, shipped them to Mexico and Canada, and the purpose behind it was the same type of labor in the US that could be employed in these other countries, but without the workers' rights. So the particular salaries that were mandated for people to have to fulfill these requirements were basically foregone in these foreign lands. It was a really slick and clever thing that you know international partners got together to screw people over with. And I've said before that a lot of times you read this stuff and on paper it sounds like the most evil thing in the world. Let me say hello to, you know what? I want to request a specific thing of you. I want you to post the pronunciation of your name in the chat because I cannot pronounce it. I've been looking at my screen and trying to click my heels to make that magic happen, but I just can't spring it. But yeah, like I was saying, when you see these policies and you say this might sound evil, it might sound like some kind of antagonistic, horrible thing that people are plotting in the back room. It makes sense when you consider the fact we've spoken about the corruption that these higher level politicians have, to where it shouldn't surprise you if a foreign entity says, hey, we'll give you money for your campaign in exchange for you helping us get this crap trade deal passed through Congress. And I know that the two forms I've heard are free and fair trade. So fair is the one that I support because, from my understanding of it, it's meant to have the labor protections. It's to basically mandate that certain requirements are made of any of these deals. Even though, from based on the way I've seen it, and just from the ones I've so NAFTA and the USMCA, the U.S. Mexico Canada agreement, the one that Trump signed, they all seem to be just really bad, like horrible. I don't know, just from everything I've read about them, they don't, like. There's no. If you ask me what's the difference between NAFTA and the USMCA, I couldn't tell you because everything that's been described of them seems to be kind of identical. But then, like, one's under a Democrat, one's under a Republican, and you know how that works. If it's under one party and you're not from that party, you cheer it on as like this great, wonderful accomplishment. And if it's from the other party, it's the worst thing that ever happened. And oh my God, how could you do this? So I really couldn't give a description. I do have a couple of audio clips that I think kind of illustrate the point I was trying to make about, and I don't know something, I try to look it up. I think it's called yeah, the US Canada Mexico Agreement. It's the USMCA. I remember that name. It was really goofy sounding. We're gonna turn every stream where I just play a secular talk video and I talk over it. Hey, I'm gonna be like his little backup promoter. I remember Hartman, the commentator on Free Speech TV. He had a whole segment where he was talking about fair and free trade and how um, there was, like, to some extent of the issue, Trump was correct. I'm trying to see if I can find it. I don't remember what the exact name of it was, so I'd have to go through and just dig and dig and dig. And I'm not really interested in doing that. At least not during the stream. I'll definitely, because a lot of times, even if I can't find the specific video, I can find something that is similar in its basic tone that goes along with the point I'm trying to make. And we've said before that I consider myself a fair arbiter of this information. So when Trump or whatever other Republican you can think of does something that I like, I give them credit for it, and I just offer them the praise of doing that thing that I think is right. Okay, all my relatives in Mexico are now enraged at Trump for his trade wars. Hey, you can't use those kind of words, Ruben. They already hated him prior to this. So imagine how much they hate him now. um, would their hatred for him be tied to the immigration stuff? Because if it is, it makes a lot of sense. And it's, I said before, I purposely go out of my way to not speak about that topic because people have actually made it their like signature issue that they just discuss over and over again to where nothing else gets talked about. But I've seen a couple of articles they were talking about how Trump has tried to merge immigration with like issues that are not related to it. So when they were talking about gutting aid to Honduras and these other countries, which again has to do with U.S. international relations, it was based around, these are countries that people are immigrating from, whatever. And it's like, well, those two things are kind of unrelated. I just remember that. And then the Muslim ban, or rather the seven Muslim majority countries that were banned from legally entering the U.S. And I've kept telling his supporters, he is not a supporter of legal immigration. You don't sign a bill, not a bill, an executive order, excuse me, that says you who legally is trying to enter the U.S. If you come from this country, you can't come here. That's not an illegal immigrant executive order. That is a legal immigrant executive order that is anti-immigrant. Like just objectionably, you have to concede that. It's that topic. I don't like talking about it either. Also, Mexico is not as unstable as Central America. I didn't think it was. I think Mexico has the same thing that Venezuela has, where people just like bring it up to fuel whatever agenda they have in the U.S. Like, oh my God, if you let this person win, we're gonna turn into this country. It's like, yeah, whatever. If you say so. Let's see. Okay, I almost have the link. Let me post it in here, and then click it on here. We have to do all kind of little trickery. I have to be able to see the camera. I have to use the phone to then post it somewhere else, and then grab it from there and then stick it on here. Okay, we go over to the site. Let's see, there it is. There's that wonderful uh, Hartman video. Copy the link. Say hello to Mark. Give him a little greeting. Mark, you missed the live show last night. That was actually pretty entertaining. I mean, we talked about all kinds of stuff. We talked about the romance crap. We talked about how like the media loves Kennedy so much that every single person who runs for office that is spoken like is compared to someone positively is compared to him. It was a really it was like a wide spectrum, just array of things that were being discussed. And I don't usually that's why it's so sad to do streams during the week when people are busy, because a lot of times just me talking to the camera when you actually have people speaking about something and no one's calling somebody an idiot and trying to chuck up their fist. It's nice. That's the kind of engagement I actually am interested in. Not, hey, you're stupid. You do what I want you to do. Like, relax. All right. So this is a video by Thom Hartmann. Well, not a video, but it is a clip of his show. And the title is China Preparing for a Trade War with Trump. And I want to listen to it and then give my reaction. Because like I said, I'm not that knowledgeable about this topic. I want to basically, I want to give you a live presentation of my, I don't know what you could call, what term you would use, analyzing or attempting to understand something. It's one of those words. Okay, Mark says I saw the notification for it, but couldn't watch because I was working. Hey, no one is pissed off. I won't behoove any person who regularly shows up or tries to show up for missing, the occasional thing or things on any kind of recurrence because only human. So it is what it is.
Another issue here that is a piece of this, and there's a huge story, absolutely huge story today in the New York Times that is being, as far as I can tell, completely ignored by the electronic media that you need to know about. And this is, I predict this is going to be one of the principal issues on which the 2020 election, at least for president, turns. And that's trade. I got an email from Donald Trump. As you know, if you just tuned in, I've been telling this story for years now. Back in 2015, when Trump announced, it was sometime after he announced, but I thought, okay, there's a freak show going on here. I want to get on this guy's mailing list. So I sent $5 to his campaign in the name of Fred Flintstone. I hope that's not a campaign finance crime. If it is, I plead guilty, I guess. But in any case, I've been getting emails ever since addressed to Fred. And here's one of the most recent ones. Fred, China is cheating the system. Now, these emails are going out to tens of millions of Americans who have donated to the Trump campaign, right? Dirty bureaucrats in Washington have allowed China to take advantage of our great nation for far too long. We've been a piggy bank that everyone wants to raid and exploit. No more. Trump is taking long overdue action by standing up to China's unfair trade policies and defending America's intellectual property, something cheating Obama would never have done. President Trump.
Okay, just to cut in there, the parts where, and again, I give credit where it's due. The parts where they talk about China screwing over the U.S. isn't really inaccurate. And the part about politicians assisting with this is also fairly accurate. We've been over this before, where these foreign individuals are able to basically buy a stock in the U.S. government through donating to the various politicians that are, high on the echelon. That being said, I'm not buying that part about Trump being the savior. But let's continue.
Trump is fighting for you, but as always, he wants to make sure he gets your input on this key issue. Please take our America versus China survey. And then, of course, you click on the survey and it immediately takes you to a page that asks you for money. Now, that's not the big story. The big story is what's kind of following that. And that is what Xi Jinping did yesterday and today in China that I'm not seeing any reference to at all, which is pretty mind-boggling. The Long March. If you talk to a person from China and you say Long March, that's like talking to an American and saying the Boston Tea Party. It's part of the foundation myth, the mythology, and it's not a myth, by the way. It actually happened, but I mean, I'm using the term in the sociological / political context. It's the foundation myth of modern China. And what it was in 1934, Mao Zedong and a bunch of communists. At that point in time, the country, China, was controlled by Chiang Kai-shek, the nationalists, and they started this literally 4,000-mile 1 year. They called it the Long March. People died on this march. And they started it in, what's the town? In Jiangxi province. Okay, this is where the march started. And this is what kicked off the communist revolution in China. So that by 1949, they were able to actually drive Chiang Kai-shek out of China. He went to Taiwan and founded the modern country of Taiwan. And the communists took over China. So this is their founding myth, okay, or founding story, let's say. So yesterday, day before yesterday, Tuesday. Oh, wait a minute. Today's Wednesday, right? Yeah. Okay. Yesterday, Xi Jinping went to.
To answer your question, Mark, I think China is indisputably the number one actual threat to the U.S. Um, there's a really good clip of Gravel, that senator I was talking about yesterday. I know you weren't here for that stream, but he's the one that's running for president, who actually is 90. He did an interview with Jimmy Dore, and he was talking about how China is smart because they've been making allies with other countries, whereas the U.S. has been bombing other countries, 7 of them, in fact. They haven't been in a war in 40 years, whereas we've wasted, a lot of our resources in these different conflicts. And they're basically are pretty much revving themselves up to take the U.S.'s place as the world's leading superpower in the next 20 years. Again, I'm going to need to look for that. I know the video, but I have to find that part of the video and play that for you. It really cemented my position on, when you think of the U.S. as, number one. Like, if any of these countries are a threat to the U.S., a genuine threat, it's China, indisputably. Like, Gravel was talking about how North Korea, and I know we're getting a little bit off topic, but I'm going to answer this in full. He was talking about how these other countries that have warheads are like the U.S. in that, they have these weapons that they're not going to use, because a nuclear winter is enough to just completely just decimate millions of lives. So the fact that the U.S. has more than anywhere else basically doesn't change the fact that they're all sitting at the same power level. Um, and that when you factor out artillery and you start talking about, economic warfare and actually building yourself up and not running into the same pitfalls of trying to assert yourself as the number one adversary and a number of people. He spoke so eloquently about this. It's really a shame that clip doesn't have millions of views. But I will try to see if I can pull that particular part. The video was like 30 minutes, so I have to sift through it. But I'll look for it during the stream. Venezuela's another one. Yeah, I don't think they're, again, the number one threat to the U.S. in my opinion is indisputably China. They are a hell of a lot organized than any of these other places, other than a couple like the one that Ruben just mentioned. But you get my point.
Jiangxi province. He went to the place where the Long March started. And he spoke at the site of the start of the Long March. This would be like an American president going to where the Boston Tea Party started, at the wharf in Boston, or maybe the Gettysburg Address. Although this is more a founding, but we kind of rebooted our country. In any case, he goes there and he says, "Now there is a new Long March, and we should make a new start." That's a verbatim quote from Xi Jinping, the president, or whatever, emperor of China. It was broadcast on state-run television on Tuesday. Then this morning, he told another audience in the same town in Jiangxi. This is from a piece by Alexander Stevenson in today's New York Times. The headline: "China faces new long march as trade war intensifies," Xi Jinping says. On Wednesday, Mr. Xi told another audience in Jiangxi that the country, quote, "must be conscious of the long-term and complex nature of various unfavorable factors at home and abroad, and properly prepare for the various difficult situations." In other words, Xi is saying to his people, get ready, it's going to get tough. Now, they just had this swine flu, or I'm not sure it's a flu, but it's a disease that affects pigs. They've killed millions and millions of pigs, or hogs, or whatever, in China, to try to stop this disease. This is driving up pork prices. Their fruit prices have been going up in part because of wild weather in China. This is not something that's happening just in the United States, but they're blaming it all on us. And in fact, he went to the city of Guangzhou, which is where there's a rare earth mine. Now, right now, China, rare earths are necessary to create computer chips and also to make solar panels. And we used to have a major rare earth supply in California. There's a giant mine in California for rare earth minerals. But the Chinese started producing rare earth minerals literally below market prices, below the price that we could manufacture or that we could extract and find them here in the United States. And so our mines all closed. So China's the world's supply of this stuff right now. Right? There's three principal places that supply it: China, Africa, and California. And I forget where in Africa they're mining it. I think it might be near the DRC. But in any case, the mines in Africa are increasingly being controlled by the Chinese through the Belt and Road Initiative. And he gave this speech in Guangzhou and said that, quote, "We must intensify our efforts to develop rare earths. They are a strategic resource." So they're getting ready for a trade war. In fact, they declared one this morning. And they also notified Trump that there's no more trade talks. Sorry, no more trade talks. Now, what Donald Trump is going to do with this, mark my words, is he is going to run on this in 2020. This is probably going to soften, if not sink, our economy. And, I'm going to get into that in an hour. There's, I was right about the crash of 2016, and we'll get into all those details. But Greg Sargent noted, this was a week or so ago, May 13th, in the plumb line in the Washington Post, he noted that, quote, "Trump is staking re-election on one of his biggest lies. That is that China is paying us billions in tariffs." And, in point of fact, American companies or Chinese companies are paying the tariffs. But, and this was part of, Greg Sargent's basically, we need to have trade. And today, similarly, in the New York Times, you've got Thomas Friedman, the perpetually confused op-ed columnist, saying China deserves Donald Trump. He says, "We let China join the World Trade Organization in 2001, and China grew by forcing technology transfers from U.S. companies, subsidizing its own companies, maintaining high tariffs, ignoring WTO rulings, and stealing intellectual property." Thomas Friedman goes on to say China under Xi announced a Made in China 2025 modernization plan, promising subsidies to make China's private and state-owned companies the world leaders in superconducting, artificial intelligence, new materials, 3D printing, facial recognition software, robotics, electric cars, autonomous vehicles, 5G wireless, and advanced microchips. Now, Friedman, of course, the author of The Olive Tree versus the Lexus, which was a total crazy BS book, thinks that the solution to this is more free trade. But I'm telling you, the reason Sherrod Brown won re-election in Ohio the same year that Donald Trump became president, and Brown won re-election by 6 or 8 points, and Trump won Ohio by a couple of points. The reason Sherrod Brown won is because he has been saying from the get-go, forever, we need a tariff-based protectionist trade system in the United States. We are the only developed country in the world that doesn't have a VAT tax. Other countries are using their VAT taxes as a functional tariff. And many of these countries actually literally have tariffs.
Let's replay that just for emphasizing the point. So I just want to clarify something. I've looked at the record of Sherrod Brown, that particular Ohio Democrat he's talking about. I can't stand him. He voted to not start, but he was one of the senators that voted in favor a couple of years ago, but it's still a thing that irks me, that voted to go into Yemen. He's opposed to single payer. He's talking about Medicare for all starting at 55. So I have to wait 30 plus years to get something that other countries have from the time you're born. So there's a number of things I don't like about him, but let's hear this comment again, because I want to emphasize this point.
Trump won Ohio by a couple of points. The reason Sherrod Brown won is because he has been saying from the get-go, forever, we need a tariff-based protectionist trade system in the United States. We are the only developed country in the world that doesn't have a VAT tax. Other countries are using their VAT tax.
A tariff-based protectionist trade policy in the U.S., and we're the only developed country without a VAT tax, whereas other countries are,
as a functional tariff. And many of these countries actually literally have tariffs. So, this is the situation that we're facing right now, is that this basically we have to reboot our trade systems. I have been saying this on this program for 15 years. This whole embrace of so-called free trade back in the 90s was crazy. And, and it was crazy. And it's coming home to roost.
With all that USA offers, why go with anybody else?
Oh my God. I hate those ads so much. I should turn off autoplay. That was a mistake on my part. But look, again, as someone that is not a fan of Sherrod Brown to any extent whatsoever, it kind of looks like he knows what he's talking about when it comes to trade. When you, again, I think I mentioned the phrase fair. It's an alternate term used for protectionist trade. He seems to get it, and I can't argue with with a state voting for a Republican for president, a Democrat as senator, and not figuring out that some of those people voted for both of those and figuring out what exactly led them to do that. I know that TPP was garbage and it was being pushed that year, so that's another issue. Although, wouldn't that would probably be considered under climate? I'm not going to get into that. A lot of real estate in California is being bought out by wealthy Chinese people. I mean, I guess because I don't know what to add to that. I don't have a statistic to go along with what you're saying. Okay, Mark says need to have full control over their resources, but instead yeah. Oh yeah, man. They're that's why I said, let them get that a certain amount of free money. Let them have it. Because I really like you gotta understand something about me. If someone is swearing up and down that if you just do this one thing, it will change, I would rather see that one thing be applied and watch it not change than to just keep saying and arguing with them that it's not going to be effective. Um, so if they think that when they get that's and you know what bill I'm talking about, Mark, a certain you did something to my ancestors, so give me this. I hope even though it won't because the Senate is controlled by Republicans, but I hope that passes and in both chambers. And when it does, I don't hope that we get this result, but I know we will. I await to see the lack of development or changes in the way things are. And I won't say that with a gloat or a boastful harp, just something that people can see coming from a mile away. Yeah, Tom is a really bright person. I watch his I think he's the only like out of all those different cable hosts, he's the only one I watch, or at least attempt to watch with any regularity. Because he posts his entire show on YouTube as well, which is great. He's a man of ahead of his times. I don't know why Fox doesn't do that. They just post clips. It's like, dude, no, what harm is there to be brought upon reaching out to those who don't use, who don't have TVs? It's dumb. But we've been over this before. People do all kind of weird stuff, and the rest of us just have to put up with it. Is the left wing outlet host? Yeah, it's him. It's Jimmy. It's Kyle. It's Jank. Great man. I wish they could have a. I wish Jank had his own show. That would be terrific. Because like most of the time when I see people bagging on TYT, it's usually like he has the one or two occasional comments that are kind of get people off, but it's usually Anna that they're pissed off at, or one of the other co-hosts that isn't as recurring. You get the point. But yeah, going back to what I was saying, I'm gonna look. I want to make sure Mark is still here. I'm gonna look for the Gravel clip where he's talking about China being the U.S. is like taking our place as the leading superpower. So I hope Mark can type something in chat, confirm that he's still around, because I don't want to play this for Ruben and then Ruben's like, I didn't even want this, and then decides to stop engaging with any of my content for the rest of eternity after not having what he wanted played in front. Okay, good. See, I'm gonna look for this man. We'll see what happens. Type this in.
We have special guests with us.
That is very, very low.
As former Senator Mike Gravel is here. Mike, how are you?
Well, first off, it wasn't my idea. It's these kids that talk their own seed corn, because our future is going to be these people educated and Armed Services Committee, 6 years on foreign relations. We're opposed to that. So what do? We want people to arm themselves job by taking it over. They're doing a good job, so there's benefit to all of the stakeholders involved in that development. But they're going to just be patient, and they're not going to confront us. You know, we have the Thucydides trap. I don't know if you're aware of it. And they have overcapacity within their country that they're trying to build projects that uses up their excessive capacity, and it's a win-win for the local government. It's a win-win for China, and it's a win-lose for the United States, because we refuse to get involved and really concentrate on arming ourselves and arming the people to take China on. Not going to happen. China has got too much patience. They're not going to buy into our craziness in this regard.
So when you say that China has overcapacity, you mean they have over industrial capacity that they couldn't use in their own country, so that they then export their capacity that way? Is that what you're saying when you say capacity?
Both. Yeah, that's exactly correct. And they have overcapacity within their country that they're trying to use up as best they can. They did that. That's how they moved 600 million people from poverty to middle class. Now what they want to do is to move several billion people from poverty to middle class. That's what China's trying to do. And we are opposing them and sabotaging every time they try this. But they're going to just be patient, and they're not going to confront us. You know, we have the Thucydides trap. I don't know if you're aware of what that is.
No.
And Thucydides was the historian of the Peloponnesian War. And what he found was that when the power is threatened by an ascendant power, the possibility of war is very imminent. There's been 16 instances of this in human history. 4 of them have been resolved peacefully. The rest have all resulted from wars. So we saw in the last century the loss of Britain or the attempted conflict between Britain and Germany. And Britain won, but it was a product of a war. After the Second World War, the British Empire imploded, and they just grabbed us and hung on with us. And so that was a peaceful evolution. Now, what will happen with the United States? If it's up to China, it'll be peaceful. If it's up to the United States, there's a great possibility of war that we would instigate, because we resent the fact that China is going to be superior to us economically, scientifically, and many other areas within 20 years. So
they would be the ascendant power, China?
Correct. Okay. And we would be the hegemon that is being displaced by the rise of China.
So Trump has been encouraging and pushing the European allies to spend more money on arms. And you think that's tied in with the China also?
It certainly is, because keep in mind that the United States is responsible for 50% of the arms production in the world. So here, digest that. More than 50% of the arms production in the world is the United States providing that. So what we want to do is have people buy our arms, get loaded up to the teeth with this capability of killing people, and China takes the opposite direction. Here, let me give you an interesting development that's going on that's not fully perceived. You hear in the American press a great deal about the South China Sea, and the fact that China is creating these islands. They're dredging up the dirt and creating an island and putting an airport on the island. What they're doing, and most people don't realize it, they only have 2 aircraft carriers. We have 19. Now, that'll give you an idea of this balance. And so we like to move our aircraft carriers around and show the flag and show how powerful we are. China doesn't have to do that. China's only interested in one thing, and that is sustaining and securing their trade routes. South China Sea is the major trade route for China, also South Korea and Japan. And so they're afraid that the United States with Singapore could block the access out of the South China Sea. So what the Chinese have done, which I think is very clever, they've created these islands. And what are they? These islands are stationary aircraft carriers that are unsinkable. Let me repeat that. These islands are aircraft carriers that are unsinkable. And yet they're in a defensive position, to defend the position of the South China Sea for the ability of China, Korea, Japan to transmit their treasure to other parts of the world who are prepared to buy it.
So aren't nuclear weapons supposed to stop this kind of stuff? Like China has nukes, right?
I think we've established the point I was trying to make. I hope you like that, Mark. It was, like I said, there are just certain people, commentators, that they put things in such a manner that it's clear, it's without having to pause like I oftentimes do. And I just think it's better to hear it from the horse's mouth than me attempt to regurgitate it when we all know I get a source from somewhere. um, but look, he made an important statement, which was that China is interested in its trade routes. They have this new island where they can't sink it. It clears things up. I'm glad, but because remember, the whole point of doing this type of stream, you see the title, "The Trade Confession," is admitting that there's certain stuff that we don't know, and that if presented with information that is, let's say, to the contrary of the position we had going in, we might change our view. It's not about trying to prove someone's right or wrong. It's just accepting what is reality, trying to be informed of events and ongoing scenarios. And I do find it interesting that they would actually put such a priority on trade. And I really wish I could have played the part where he talked about the connection between how the US is, and he did sort of mention this, the US is attempting to have it's trying to have its cake and eat it too, because you can't be in over 100 different countries as this offensive force. And we've mentioned this before, how the US Army is, the US military is spread across all these different regions, and at the same time try to be on top of everything else. And that, it's so funny to look at China, that which again hasn't been in a war since 79, and see them be this like peaceful force that is attempting to communicate with the rest of the world, not have the same conflicts the US has. And then the US just keeps repeating the same mistakes of yesterday. Like, it's so sad because people vote for someone like Obama or Trump thinking they're going to get a complete transformative alteration of who they had before, like a Bush, right? But then what ends up happening? They get the same trade conflicts, the same 7 wars, the same economic disparity. 76% of Americans living paycheck to paycheck. These issues just, they're retained through each person, because people get tricked into thinking that when you have a DR and R next to your name, there's going to be some major reversal. I mean, I can sit here and we've been over the fact that I like Sanders, and I've mentioned that repeatedly, but I haven't seen, outside of a couple of other people, politicians from either party really saying, hey, NAFTA was a scam. The USMCA is also a scam. You'll see a couple of Republicans will say NAFTA is a scam, but they're only saying that because their new job is to bootlick for Trump. Whether you like him or not, these free trade deals do not assist American workers. They take jobs and objectives that could be fulfilled by people that live in the US and ship them overseas so they can be performed and done by individuals who don't mind not having a pot to piss in, or rather don't have laws that protect them from being given some subpar wage for their work. Pyramid scheme, because those guys at the top get a couple more coins. But again, we're talking about the unregulated. Like, I just think it's funny how all this stuff goes together. We talked about how the banks need to be regulated. People say, "Oh my God, government oversight," bleh. But then they're really silent about the Patriot Act. Basically, it goes back to this thing where if there's no regulations in place, regular people get screwed over 9 times out of 10. All these Republicans that started out as never Trump and are now just sucking them off like Ted Cruz. I'd say the best example of that is Lindsey Graham. He is like, if you watched, I guess with me, I always think about how he was like, I'm not going to vote for Trump or Hillary, and then in the first couple of months of Trump being in office, he was talking about how this is the final hour, and really speaking about him in a derogatory manner. And then by his second year, it was almost like the vacuum cleaner came out and he was just sucking and doing that over and over. So I think Cruz is definitely guilty of it as well. But see, here's what's really funny about Cruz. Again, I give people credit when they deserve it. When Trump announced he was going to pull out of Syria, you had Rubio losing his mind, you had Cotton losing his mind, you had Rand cheering him on because Rand loves to be out of these conflicts, which is good. That's why I like Rand, at least when it comes to international issues. What did Cruz say when Trump announced he was getting out of Syria? Nothing. He had no statement, no reaction. It was almost like it never happened, because he is more calculated in his bootlicking to know that if there is an incident or a position that Trump has that is not in line with his philosophy of backing these, like these different conflicts and various other issues that he doesn't align with him on, he's not going to be like the other Republicans that are donor stooges just like him and verbally express their condemnation of that. He is going to wait it out and find something that he agrees with Trump on to fawn over and suck him off over in place of whatever the disagreement was. Just saying, Ruben, I've followed these people's careers over the last couple of years, and I like to believe I know how they roll. Like, I know that Cotton is like if I think of a politician who has tried to stoke stuff with Iran, like out of anyone that isn't a president, Cotton's the first one I'll go to. He is the principal Israeli government bootlicker when it comes to screwing with that country. It is ridiculous. So I think we've learned something here. I hope Mark enjoyed the segment with Gravel. Like I said, he's a really bright person who is unfortunately not getting his message across because of a lack of name recognition. And Hartman is really smart as well. I like being able to play that stuff because it's literally me taking my own sources and saying, hey, look at this, hear this. It's an enjoyable thing. So anyone have any last comments to make, things to say, concerns and theories? Speak now or forever hold your peace, at least until the stream tomorrow. Anything else? I enjoyed the stream. Are you gonna do a stream on negative reinforcement? What do you mean by negative reinforcement? Was like the personality vlog type thing where just you talk about examples of it and whatnot? I'm glad Ruben is okay now. I'm so happy that he got to wake up early and experience the joy of having American jobs shipped overseas so people can get paid coins for things people from here would get paid dollars to do. I'd have to look up the term and then maybe attach some. I'm not saying I'm opposed to doing it. It's just something I probably. I guess I could maybe squeeze that in. I'm not sure. Maybe I can do it during the live show for next week, next Saturday. I don't really have any topic I've planned out for Monday. I really want to get to that significant senators series of streams I was talking about because there are so many different ones I got like on this. I have this Google Doc and it has all the names of them on there, like the top 10 I want to cover, and it sucks that I can't get to that. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, I'm thinking of doing the stream you mentioned. I hope you enjoyed the examples that were given here, and like I said, I don't take shame in admitting when I don't know something. I want to learn about the gold standard. I want to learn about, uh, I guess, more economic policies and whatnot. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, I thank everyone who showed up, and I'll do another one tomorrow, hopefully around this same kind of time period. We'll see what happens. We'll just keep seeing what happens. So thank you.